Good morning, everyone. Can someone tell me whether my voice is clear? And is this screen clearly visible to all of you? Just give me a sec. Okay, check. So let's do the current affairs from 22nd to 24th Jan. Okay, and these are demarcated current affairs. You will be getting हाँ बिल्कुल पेटीएम से आप क्वेश्चन एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं, ठीक है, बट लेट्स मॉनिटर कि अब हो क्या रहा है, कब तक होगा, है ना. एंड व्हेन एवर वी विल डू, जैसे कि यस्टरडे न्यूज़ है ना, तो व्हेन एवर वी विल कम टू 31st वी विल डील विद दिस इशू कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली. ओके, so let's start with the first news. Scope of financial services that can be taken up at IFSC expanded. ठीक है, तो गिफ्ट सिटी, you know, the things which you can do or the businesses that you can incorporate more in the gift city have been increased. For example, the bookkeeping, accounting, taxation and financial crime reporting, all of these things have been increased. ठीक है, so nothing special is there in this news. Then it talks about WEF, World Economic Forum meeting that happened in Davos in 2024. Okay, so this was 54th meeting. These were 5 key themes that were discussed over there: artificial intelligence, war and uncertainty, climate change, China's economy and India. Okay, and as you can see, all of these things are various, you know, important issues that we are dealing with in current scenario. For example, artificial intelligence, war, especially in 2 arenas, if you include Ukraine as well as Hamas-Israel conflict, and even small bit of arena, for example, Armenia versus Azerbaijan, है ना? So war is now unfortunately a reality in nowadays. Then we have the pinnacle issue of climate change, and lastly China economy going down, and at the same time India's economy and India's economic potential going up. Because these are the news that impact global environment, global economic environment. As all of you know, how China's economy, since it is the second largest economy in the world, as well as it is the first, you know, top economy in context of PPP dollars, if you measure. So if anything happens to China's economy, it, you know, naturally have a multiplier effect on the whole world economy, है ना? So that's why discussing China's economy and preparing ourselves in order to be resilient against any adverse effect if China's economy continue to slide, that's the global issue. And India, as all of you know, that how much India is right now a potential with respect to being a top economy. Okay, so the World Economic Forum, it was founded in 1971. It's a non-governmental organization, headquarters Geneva. And can you tell who's the founder of World Economic Forum? How many of you know the founder of World Economic Forum? Professor Klaus Schwab. ठीक है? Yes, correct. Next news is about Central Bank of India is planning offer for sale to reduce government stake. ठीक है? अब सिंपल सा इसमें कॉन्सेप्ट है, government stake, government shareholding. For example, if it is 15%, or let's be a little bit realistic, if it is more than 50%. ठीक है. Now the Central Bank of India wants to reduce this shareholding, and they can either do so via FPO, follow on public offer. That means putting out more shares in the market, but that will have adverse effect on, or that will dilute the shareholding of not only government but of everyone. अब डाइल्यूशन ऑफ शेयर होल्डिंग कैसे होगा? अब आप बताओ, अभी मार्केट में 100 शेयर हैं, गवर्नमेंट के पास 55 है, तो यू विल से दैट गवर्नमेंट इज होल्डिंग 55%. बट इफ सेंट्रल बैंक ऑफ इंडिया पुट एडिशनल 100 शेयर्स इन द मार्केट, तो फिर टोटल शेयर कितने हो गए? टोटल हो गए 200, बट गवर्नमेंट ओनली हैज 55. Then what will you tell? That how much percentage does government have? You will say 22.5%. तो शेयर होल्डिंग तो डिक्रीज हो गई, बट ये फिर हर एक शेयर होल्डर की डिक्रीज हो जाएगी, है ना? इट्स नॉट लाइक ओनली गवर्नमेंट शेयर होल्डिंग विल डिक्रीज, इट विल डाइल्यूट एवरी अदर इन्वेस्टर्स शेयर होल्डिंग. बट सेंट्रल बैंक ऑफ इंडिया डजंट वांट टू डू दिस, एज यू कैन सी इन दिस न्यूज, that it has chosen to take the OFS route to avoid dilution of its equity capital base while increasing public float of shares. ठीक है, तो फिर कैसे होगा ये? ऑफर फॉर सेल में क्या होगा? इट इज डूइंग नथिंग बट जो 55% शेयर्स हैं गवर्नमेंट के इन ऑफर फॉर सेल, द गवर्नमेंट विल पुट it's, let's say, 10% shares for sale. That means अब गवर्नमेंट के पास 45% रह जाएगा, एंड 10% गवर्नमेंट ने कर दिया कि इट्स ऑन ऑफर फॉर सेल. एवरीबडी अदर देन गवर्नमेंट कैन बाय दीज शेयर्स. ठीक है, तो अगर मान लीजिए 2-3 इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, ABC, दीज इन्वेस्टर्स हैड 10%, 20%, and what's remaining? 15%. तो one of the investors says, okay, I will buy these 10% shares. तो इसके पास 20 हो गए, गवर्नमेंट के पास 45, and then again, but the value of even BC who did not took participation of shares, the value didn't decrease because there were no further additional shares, तो उनके शेयर होल्डिंग डाइल्यूट नहीं हुई, है ना? So this is what the offer for sale is. इसमें जो existing share already present in the market, those are changing hands from government to some other investor. ठीक है? तो I hope you understand what's offer for sale. Any confusion? Chalo. So let's have a little bit understanding of the news also. So the Central Bank of India has chosen to reduce government stake through offer for sale approach. ठीक है? तो right now government has over 93% stake in CBI. Okay? So through this offer for sale, the government share will be reduced and rest of the share will be bought by the retail investor or other institutional investors. Let's move on to the next news. Next news is about the scheme Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana. The Surya, sun, solar energy. So this scheme is related to that only. In this scheme, the government says that we will be providing rooftop solar panel installations to over 1 crore households. Okay? To over 1 crore households, the government will be planning to install solar rooftop panels. Okay? And there will be 2 benefits associated with it. Okay? There will be 2 benefits associated with it. And what are the benefits? City. That means you are not dependent on the grid. Okay? And suppose if there are more solar power installations, okay, so you are generating electricity more than whatever you are utilizing. So there are some extra electricity also. So what if government provides a mechanism through which you can sell this extra electricity to the power grid and then get money also? So these are the 2 benefits that through PM Suryodaya Yojana the government is hoping for. First of all, generating renewable energy, okay, reducing fossil fuel demand, 3-4 benefits hai. Then making households independent with respect to power generation, okay, and this also saves their money regarding, less electricity bill. Then extra electricity that they are generating from the solar panels, they can provide it back to the power grid. Okay, फिर बाद में that power grid can utilize or send that electricity to some other places which have higher requirement. And by providing this electricity, you get money also. So these are the benefits that government is thinking about with respect to utilizing this yojana. Okay? And yes, nationally determined contribution. It will help us achieve NDC. And what is NDC? NDC is a part of UNFCCC. NDC basically हर एक nation अपना contribution बताता है under Paris Agreement, that what they will be doing to mitigate the impact of climate change. Next is upfront payment for extraction of minerals capped at ₹500 crore. ठीक है? तो as all of you know, कोई एक mineral ब्लॉक का ऑक्शन होता है तो गवर्नमेंट टेक्स अपफ्रंट पेमेंट कि आप मुझे इतना दे दो, फिर बाद में आपको बेसिकली बिड कराता है पहले. सो 4-5 people will bid for this block, and this block will be having, let's say, value of 100 crore. If you get this block, you will have to pay 100 crore to the government upfront. पहले ही देना पड़ेगा, फिर आप जो करना करो जब तक आपके पास लीज है. ठीक है? So this upfront payment, there was no cap on that. ठीक है? पहले कैप नहीं था, तो अब कैप नहीं है, तो फिर आप इसको 500 करोड़ कर लो या 1000 करोड़ कर लो या 10,000 करोड़ कर लो. ठीक है? But whenever you increase this upfront payment, it actually disincentivize small businesses. ठीक है? And obviously 500 करोड़ भी कोई छोटा अमाउंट नहीं है, but especially if those businesses that are involved in this mining sector, small business obviously will be much more benefiting in cases of having a cap of 500 crores. तो अब जो छोटे कंपनीज हैं वो भी बिड कर सकेंगे क्योंकि they will not be disincentivized by the huge upfront payment. ठीक है? So this is one thing. 500 करोड़ का कैप लगाया. Just remember this amount. Then we have, while also barring the affiliates from bidding for the same block, this is also another impact. ठीक है? Bids placed by affiliate of companies who have explored a block being auctioned will be made public to ensure level playing field. अब क्या बोल रहे हैं ये लोग? तो for example, let's say, there are subsidiary companies of various companies. तो Reliance की एक enterprises है, and then Reliance we also have specific mining sector related company, let's assume. ठीक है? So what the government is saying, as a Reliance, you can only bid via one company. It should not be like you are bidding one bid and then your subsidiary company is also bidding one thing. ठीक है? It should not be like that. Your affiliates bidding will be barred. Next is coal power generation rises by 7% during April to December. So it's a dynamic news, nothing specific. But just remember that domestic coal-based generation rise by 7% to 872 billion units. Household debt grows highest in 10 years. So this is related to data in India. So they are specifically talking about non-mortgage debt of household. That means non-housing loan or debt apart from housing. It has risen by almost 21.5% in September. Okay? The highest growth in a decade. So household debt was 38.3% of GDP in Q2 financial year 23-24, which is a new peak. So data is released by Motilal Oswal. So the important thing for you to remember is that you at least have an idea that up to what percentage of GDP the household debt is nowadays. Okay? So just remember it is close to 35 to 40%. Okay? So let's move on to next news, which is about data on share of education and health in total expenditure. That how much governments, which includes center as well as state governments, how are they, utilizing or doing expenditure on health and education. As all of you know that every year the government is focusing upon capital expenditure, ठीक है? But social infrastructure पे कितना खर्चा कर रहे हैं? So let's discuss about that. So the data shows, and this is the data from financial year 15 to 23. It shows that the expenditure on education as well as health has consistently declined. Okay? And obviously it's a center plus state data. अगर आप center का data देखेंगे तो you will realize that obviously it has increased. But if you combine the data, then you will realize that in financial year 15, 10.8% was done on education, 4.5% was done on health. In education in financial year 23, it has reduced to 9.5. But in health, it has increased to 6.9. And specifically, with respect to COVID, it has naturally increased. Okay? So just remember this news that in education, the expenditure of combined center and states is decreased. And you can utilize this information in various descriptive answers also, if you want to write. Next, some data regarding fishery sector in India. So India is third largest producer of fisheries in the world, okay, and it produced 17.54 million tons in 2022-23. And since it's an annual data, it becomes important for us to remember. Okay, so the country now accounts for 8% of global production, and fishing contributes to 1.09% of India's GVA. So अब इसमें देखो, this is a very important data, especially if you're focusing upon economy in general. अगर आपसे, let's say if they talk about what is the position of India's agricultural sector, what is the position of, अगर sectoral GDP के बारे में भी पूछा जाए, तो this is the data that you need to mention in your descriptive answers. As we've discussed this immensely in whenever we do our descriptive sessions. So you can imagine how much this is important. Next, data on toll revenue. Okay? As all of you know that how toll collections have improved because of the FASTag. So this is the annual data with respect to toll collection. So annual data in any ways is a better parameter to remember, and it's related to infrastructure sector. So anyways, it's related to our syllabus. So the bulk of India's road toll revenues come from national highways, rising from 17,000 crores to 48,000 crores in 2022-23. Okay, so almost close to 50,000 crores we are coming in as compared to 2015. And what the government is targeting? The government is targeting a revenue of 1.3 trillion by 2030, which provides or roughly gives you an annual average growth of 15%. ठीक है, एंड दिस इज ओनली पॉसिबल इफ यू इंक्रीज द नंबर ऑफ टोल प्लाजास, ठीक है, बिकॉज इट हैज ऑल्सो risen 5-fold. That's why you see a lot number of revenue too. And another important thing that you remember, that road sector is the largest sector if we talk about national monetization pipeline. Okay? It is contributing to 27% of annual revenue. Next, reduction in capital expenditure. So the government's capital expenditure growth to slow down to just 12% in 24-25 from 37.4% in last year's budget. This is a report by India Ratings. Center is committed to reduce its fiscal deficit to 4.5% of GDP by 25-26 from a target of 5.9 this year. The capital expenditure, as all of you know, that how much money that the government will be spending on creating assets in the economy. This is what capital expenditure is. ठीक है, road infrastructure, logistics infrastructure, all those infrastructure, and even dedicated freight corridor, utilizing those money to generate more productive capacity in the economy. So that is what the government has been consistently doing since the COVID days, or since the COVID year. Every year the government is continuously doing capital expenditure. But the India rating saying that since the government have a target of reducing fiscal deficit from 6.4 in the previous financial year to 5.9 in this current financial year and 4.5 by 25-26. ठीक है, ये गवर्नमेंट का टारगेट है. तो in order to fulfill that target, they will have to reduce the expenditure or they have to increase the revenue. अब revenue increase करने की, there is some limit, but obviously they will be reducing infrastructure, expenditure. That's why the India ratings is saying that government capital expenditure growth, which was 30% almost, it will reduce because now government has to save money in order to reduce fiscal deficit. ठीक है? Next, direct tax to GDP ratio rose to 15-year high in financial year 23. ठीक है? But tax buoyancy have shown a dip. So let's read the news, and whenever we'll read the news, if any term will come, we'll see that also. So direct tax to GDP, which reflects share of taxes in overall output generated in the country, it rose by 15%. Income tax return filers have increased to 7.4 crores in the same period. The cost of tax collection in percentage term reduced by 0.51%, but in absolute terms increased to 8452 crores. Tax buoyancy, however, it dipped to 1.18 from 2.5 to previous year. ठीक है? And then we have net direct tax collection increased by 160%. Gross collection stood at 19.7 lakh crores. अब एक एक करके सबको समझ लेता है. ठीक है? So tax buoyancy is a term that tells you that how much responsive the tax revenues are as compared to GDP. तो जितना GDP grow कर रहा है in terms of percentage wise, is your taxes or tax revenue also increasing? So for example, if let's say the GDP increased by 10%, but your tax revenues only increased by 6%, then you will call this tax less buoyant. ठीक है? But if GDP increased by 10% and the tax increased by, or tax revenue increased by 15%, then you will call it more tax buoyant. ठीक है? So this is what tax buoyancy is. It tells you how the tax revenue is responsive of the change in GDP. So as per this news, which says the tax buoyancy dipped to 1.18 in 2022-23. See, if you're seeing this 1.18, that means the GDP, if it is growing by 10%, okay, then the tax revenue is growing by 11.8%. तो एटलीस्ट जीडीपी से तो ज्यादा ग्रो कर ही रहा है, बट पहले 25% करता था, बट नाउ दैट हैज बीन रिड्यूस्ड, बट स्टिल वी आर इन द पॉजिटिव, बट एटलीस्ट ठीक है. So this is what the situation of tax buoyancy is. Then we have net direct tax collection and gross direct tax collection. अब इसमें क्या है? You know, for example, from April to 31st March, the government collect taxes, and अक्सर होता है कि people usually pay either, let's say, or either क्या मतलब usually pay more taxes than they are eligible to. तो फिर end में by July they file ITR and then they get refund. ठीक है, for whatever extra taxes that they have paid. So whatever taxes that the government has collected throughout the whole year, that what you will call gross tax collected. ठीक है, but you know, afterwards when government repaid all the refunds and all the, you know, exemptions and all those things, this becomes your net tax collection plus refunds, exemptions, all those things. ठीक है, तो net tax collection का फॉर्मूला क्या हो जाएगा? Gross tax collection minus all those refunds that the government had to provide back to the government. So basically net tax collection is a much more real situation or much more close to reality, that how much government has actually got as a money of tax revenue. ठीक है, any confusion here to anyone with respect to understanding this news? When I guess that report I will cover. ठीक है, when I will take either circular or I will either take reports, a lecture. ठीक है, then only I'll clear this or I'll take that report. Can they be reduced less than 51%? हाँ यार, करने को तो कर ही सकते हैं, गवर्नमेंट दे सकती है अपना, but that will be called as, you know, disinvestment, strategic disinvestment. Chalo, let's move on to next news. But here are some state-wise data also, so let's look at that also. So in state-wise data, Maharashtra accounted for 36.4% of the overall direct tax collection. And why? Because as all of you know, Mumbai being the financial capital, तो सबसे ज़्यादा revenue तो वहीं से आता होगा, है ना? Then we have Delhi providing 13.3%, Karnataka 12.5%, Tamil Nadu 6.4%. And we've seen Telangana witnessing the highest jump in collection from tax to 35,000 crores. So you just remember Maharashtra being the top state in terms of providing tax revenue. Then we have Finance Ministry raises import duty on gold and silver findings to 15%. तो import duty, export duty का concept we've discussed numerous times. ठीक है, अब import duty कब लगेगी? जब कोई चीज import कर रहे होंगे या फिर कोई चीज export कर रहे होंगे? Naturally, it will be applied on imports. So what the news is saying, that gold and silver imports, whenever they'll enter into India, they will be imposed 15%, you know, duty, and then only they will come. तो अगर मान लो उनका प्राइस कितना है, X प्राइस है, तो 1.15x will be the price that they will be sold in India, and this is being done by the government to end tax advantage in importing gold and silver. ठीक है, in finding forms, then in bar forms. Let's move on to the next news. So fintech and software as a service dominated secondary deals in 2023 for second year straight. So this is a report by private market intelligence platform Private Circles India Startups Deal Report 2023. Okay, it tells you about how much client that these startups are getting and how much client deals that these startups are getting and in which sector specifically they are getting. So the fintech and software as a service sector has saw the highest number of funding transaction for second year straight. Okay, despite the overall startup funding dropping to 62%. Next, SEBI open offer for sale via exchange route for employees. The OFS to employees shall be on T+1 day along with retail category under a new category called employee. So if someone wants to provide their sales, okay, if someone wants to provide this, if any promoter wants to provide their share to or want to reduce their share via offer for sale route, तो आप रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स के साथ साथ एम्प्लॉय वाली कैटेगरी भी बनाओगे. दिस इज व्हाट द सेबी इज सेइंग. ठीक है, एज ऑल ऑफ यू नो दैट व्हेनेवर आईपीओ कम्स, ठीक है, जब भी आईपीओ आता है एंड व्हेनेवर यू वांट टू बिड इन दैट आईपीओ, ठीक है, अगर आप कोई एप्लीकेशन खोलोगे यहाँ पे बिड का ऑप्शन होता है. ठीक है, देन आईपीओज आर लिस्टेड. देन इफ यू क्लिक ऑन इट देन इट विल शो टू एस्पेक्ट्स. तो एक आएगा इंडिविजुअल, एक आएगा एम्प्लॉय. ठीक है, अगर कोई कंपनी निकाल रही है, फॉर एग्जांपल इफ जोमैटो इज रिलीजिंग इट्स आईपीओ, तो जोमैटो विल प्रोवाइड टू अल्टरनेटिव्स. इंडिविजुअल फॉर एनी रिटेल इन्वेस्टर हु इज नॉट एन एम्प्लॉय ऑफ जोमैटो, दे कैन ऑप्ट फॉर दिस फॉर बिडिंग आईपीओ ऑफ जोमैटो, एंड देन देयर आर एम्प्लॉयज ऑफ जोमैटो. ठीक है, तो सिमिलरली if these things are provided in case of IPO, the government is saying the same should be provided in context of offer for sale. Whenever a promoter is want to reducing, okay, its share, not only retail investors, but it should also be having a direct, pathway for employee to get those share also. This is what the government is saying, or this is what the SEBI circular is all about. Next, HDFC Bank became the first one to issue 20 million credit cards. Okay, so this is a very huge news. So just remember that with respect to issuance of credit cards, this is the order of the bank in India currently. HDFC, SBI as well as ICICI. Okay, and HDFC has become India's first bank to issue 20 million credit cards. Okay, 20 million by HDFC, 18.2 by SBI and ICICI by 16.2 million. Next, data on gig and unorganized workers. The center is thinking about extending medical benefits provided by ESIC to unorganized sector and workers. So as per Niti Aayog report, 7.7 million estimated gig and unorganized workers are in the country. The number will increase to 23.5 million by 2930. ठीक है, तो obviously since unorganized sector workers, especially the gig workers nowadays, for example Ola drivers, Swiggy, delivery partners, all those people, they have a contractual nature of job. ठीक है, and even the freelancers also do not come under the payroll of the company, and whenever an employee is not on the payroll, they do not get whatever the benefits the company provides in terms of medical insurance, in terms of PF, and in terms of other social security. Those things are naturally not provided to these gig workers as well as unorganized workers. ठीक है, तो what to do in that case? So in context of this news, the government initially talked about code of social security when they were codifying all the labor laws into 4 code. So in code of social security, the government specifically talked about that we will be providing a social security norm for gig economy workers. ठीक है, and now that thing is materializing right now. The government is thinking that they want to extend all these facilities to gig workers, because as all of you know that they do not have leverage, they do not have wages, and that can become an issue for the economy. Next, goods services export up by 4.4% in calendar year 23. And since it's a calendar year data for the whole year, it naturally becomes important, and it's an import export data. So anyways, it's an important data. Okay. The country's export of goods and services rose marginally by 0.4% to $765 billion in 23. So, on the basis of this, at least you can get an idea कि हम लोग export कितना कर रहे हैं, how much the value of exports we guys are doing. It's close to $750 billion. ठीक है? The sectors which helped India's exports obviously include electronics, pharma, cotton, yarn, fabric, made up, ceramic, meat, dairy, poultry, food, vegetables, and IT. IT have seen a decline in this year. And why do you think it is? Because, can anyone tell? Why do you think the IT sector have recently witnessed a decline in terms of exports? During COVID it increased. हाँ, COVID के टाइम पे increase था, but why it has declined because of now? Because of AI? नहीं. It's not because, अब जैसे आप ये बोलो कि डील्स की कमी कब होती है? Whenever the demand is not there. ठीक है? आप बेसिक प्रिंसिपल के हिसाब से सोचो. And if you see Indian IT sector's major market, so as all of you know, it is mostly US and Europe, the Western countries. The US and Europe were recently dealing with high inflationary conditions, increased interest rates, as well as reduced economic growth, and almost close to recession they were. ठीक है? There were increased layoff in those countries. So naturally, जब global demand weak है, so that will also impact Indian IT exports too. ठीक है? So that was one of the reasons. वर्क फ्रॉम होम इज रिड्यूस्ड. तो वर्क फ्रॉम होम से क्या रिलेशन है इस चीज का? थिंक ब्रॉड, मतलब आप थोड़ा बिजनेस के पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचेंगे दैट यू विल गेट अ ब्रॉड आइडिया. Then we have goods export in the last calendar year, however, contracted by 4.7%, but the services export have risen by 7.8%. So these are the data that you need to remember because they can come in the examination. Merchandise imports also dipped by 7% to 667.73 billion last year, as against 720.2 billion. So what will happen in case of this? Whenever the imports are low, we will be having a much better current account. ठीक है? तो deficit we will be having a little bit low. Next news: Switzerland, India both have agreed to free trade agreement after 16 years of talks. तो ठीक है, जितने भी free trade agreement that we are doing with various countries, try to make a list of that. ठीक है? India Switzerland का हो गया. There are various economic arrangements that we have done in context of. Just give me a sec. ठीक है? So as all of you know, recently we have in talks with FTA for various countries. तो आप एक लिस्ट बना लेना, especially for this year, because this will be very much important. Switzerland, we are also in talks with FTA with London as well as EU, है ना? Australia के साथ we have done a very good economic agreement, even UAE and even Singapore. तो जितने सारे agreements हो रहे हैं economic terms में, please make sure that you make a list for that so that it becomes easier for you to remember. ठीक है? So this is all for today, and due to some technical issues we will not be able to continue, but whatever news is remaining we will do tomorrow, don't worry. ठीक है? And thank you for joining, guys, and sorry for ending the class, and thank you for your patience.